You are my Lu Qi's woman, I see who dares to marry you. A boyfriend who has been dating for many years, married her sister, and wants her to be a mistress. In order to get rid of him, Xi'an rented a man online for 500,000 yuan to get married. Unexpectedly, she accidentally identified the wrong person and obtained a certificate from Lu Qi's uncle. He is a big director with double box office and good reputation in China, the only heir to the Xie Foundation, and also the man who kneels on the washboard in front of her when she gets angry. Someone advised him, "Don't be foolish, she loves your money, not you." Xie Dao said, "Why doesn't she love someone else's money and only love me Xie Jingnan's money? It's not because she likes me." Keywords of the novel. Becoming the favorite of my ex-uncle's palm without pop-ups, becoming the favorite of my ex-uncle's palm. Complete download of TXT, becoming the favorite of my ex-uncle's palm. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Domineering ex-boyfriend. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Domineering ex-boyfriend Qingqing has been arrested. He said he used drugs and was taken away by the police. When Xi'an received the news, he had just taken a shower and was about to go to bed. When she heard the words, drug use, from Qingqing, a sound echoed in her mind. Qingqing uses drugs. Saying someone else is okay, how could he be? She has known him for a few years and knows he definitely wouldn't do such a thing. She quickly changed her clothes and was ready to go out when she opened the door, only to see Lu Qi standing at the door. Seeing her lively appearance, he looked at her coldly and said, "Where are you going?" "I have something to do, please step aside." Xi'an didn't bother talking nonsense to him. She reached out and pushed him away, but was grabbed by Lu Qi. He looked at her with pitch-black eyes and said, "What happened to Qingqing?" Upon hearing him mention Qingqing, Xi'an was taken aback for a moment. She was just thinking, how could Qingqing possibly use drugs? But now seeing his reaction, she instantly understood. The feeling of fear surged out of my heart. Did you do it? Lu Qi pursed his lips and looked at her without denying it. Xi'an gritted his teeth and said, "Lu Qi, are you sick? He has been working hard in the entertainment industry for so long and just became popular. Are you just doing this to him?" She knew he was not easy to offend, but she didn't expect him to be able to do such an outrageous thing. Lu Qiyang raised his hand and held a stack of photos in his hand. It was she and Qingqing who went to watch a movie at night. In the photos, Qingqing was wearing a hat and a mask, covering it tightly. But he has been very hot lately, and paparazzi are all staring at him. Even though they were careful before, they were still photographed. Lu Qi's face turned cold and he looked unhappy. "You're going to watch a movie with him, and you want the reporter to reveal your relationship." Xi'an has known him for many years and knows that he always looks like this when he is jealous. Looking at him at the moment, she sneered, "What does it have to do with you? Young Master Lu, we broke up, and whoever I want to be with is my freedom." "It's your freedom," Lu Qi said. But as an artist himself, he doesn't cherish his career as an artist. Now that this kind of thing happens, we can only say that he deserves it. Xi'an looked at him and felt a chill in her heart as she thought that he had manipulated everything. "Lu Qi, are you going to ruin anyone I'm with?" The boy who had dinner with her a few days ago went bankrupt the next day at home. Now watching a movie with Qingqing, I didn't expect to ruin Qingqing's career as an artist. Lu Qi knew her temper and endured it. His voice softened and he said, "Anan, you are mine. I love you, don't be with anyone else, okay? Do you love me?" Xi'an looked at him, feeling that this was the funniest joke she had ever heard. "Enough, Lu Qi, you really have enough. You said you love me, but you slept with Qingqing. She's pregnant with your child now, and your wedding will be in 2 days. That's how you love me. She can't bear such love." She felt nauseous at the thought of him and Qingqing going through ups and downs. She has been with him for so many years and has always loved him very much, so even if he sometimes manages her more strictly, she will still consider his feelings and stay away from others. After learning about Yan Qingqing's pregnancy, her life instantly fell from the clouds to the bottom. She has loved him for so many years even though they had figured out what their child's name would be in the future, he turned her into a joke. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. You are the woman of Lu Qi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. You are the woman of Lu Qi. Over the past month, if it weren't for the company of friends, she wouldn't have known how she came here. However, now he even wants to take away her friends one by one. She clenched her fist and looked at Lu Qi, saying, "Quickly release Qingyu. If something happens to him, I will never forgive you." Lu Qi's voice softened. Qingyu was not his goal had always been hers. He nodded and said, "Okay, as long as you don't argue with me, I'll do whatever you want." Am I causing trouble? She looked at him and felt that he was simply unreasonable. In his eyes, the breakup she brought up was just a commotion. Lu Qi coaxed, "Xi'an, you've always been the only person I like. The incident with Yan Qingqing was just an accident, and I don't like her at all. If it weren't for the family's insistence on having her baby, I wouldn't have married her at all. Don't worry, when the child is born, I'll divorce her. I'll always be yours, okay?" Yan Xi'an looked at the man in front of her, especially when she heard his last sentence. "I will always be yours. I don't know why, I feel ridiculous to death. You're getting married, but you still want me to be with you. Lu Qi, what do you think of me as a mistress? Do you think Yan Xi'an would be a lowly mistress for you?" Lu Qi said, "No, you're not a mistress. Everything is my fault, Anan. I love you. You've been ignoring me lately, and I can't sleep well every day. Close your eyes and your mind is full of you. Don't leave me, okay? You can't sleep well, but you have the intention to mess with others. Besides pretending to be pitiful in front of her, I really don't know what he would do." Yan Xi'an said, "This is really the first time I have seen such a shameless man like you. I feel disgusted when you like me. I don't need such love. I want to say it one last time, hoping that you won't appear in front of me again in the future." Although she had already said goodbye, he always came to pester her. She is really annoyed. After Yan Xi'an finished speaking, he noticed that Lu Qi's expression had become more complicated. He said gloomily, "You can ignore me, but you will always be mine. You are the woman of Lu Qi, and I see the whole southern city. Who dares to be with you? He is Lu Qi, the small hegemon of the Lu family in the southern city, and to the best of his abilities. There is no one who dares to offend him." Yan Xi'an never expected that one day he would use his power to suppress her. She sneered, "Since you are so unreasonable, I have nothing to say to you." She's really had enough. Fortunately, she still thinks he is a person who can communicate. "You step aside, I'm leaving." She reached out and pushed him away, ready to find Qingyu. Anyway, Qingyu is always her friend. Lu Qi grabbed her arm and refused to let her go. He is very tall, and in front of him, she has no resistance at all. "As long as you promise me not to be with other men again, I will let him go." "I don't want it, I want to be with someone else." Yan Xi'an said without hesitation, "I don't believe there is no justice in this world anymore. I also don't believe that you, Lu Qi, can really cover up the sky with one hand. There are so many men in this world, there are always those who are not afraid of you. If you get Qingyu in, I can also find someone else. If you get one, I'll sleep one, and I don't believe you can kill them all." Yan Xi'an is really impatient. She used to be very sweet with Lu Qi, but now she only feels suffocated. With him, she doesn't even have freedom. "I'm here." New book, everyone has been waiting for a long time. Love you all, Momoda. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 3. He only did this to make himself bow down to Qingyu and stay by his side. But if she really agreed, what would she become? Is it his mistress or the pet he keeps in captivity? These words seemed to stimulate Lu Qi, and the man who had always been a gentleman in front of her suddenly reached out and pressed her against the wall. Xi'an was startled. The man in front of him had already pushed forward fiercely, his eyes red and full of anger. Looking for another man. Are you serious? Xi'an, I love you so much, but you actually want to sleep with someone else. He can allow her to be all kinds of capricious, but with other men, absolutely not. He finished speaking and kissed her directly. Xi'an struggled and said, Lu Qi. Lu Qi, who had lost his sanity, was as crazy as crazy. He couldn't hear her protest at all. She refused to let him kiss her, so he went to take off her clothes. During the tug, his shirt was deformed by him, a button was torn off by him, and he fell to the ground. She had been with him for so long, the first time she felt danger, and also the first time she felt that he really wanted her. Just the thought of him having children with Qingqing and now having to sleep with her. She just feels dirty. She was so angry that in the chaos, she raised her hand and slapped him in the face. With a loud bang. As the slap fell, tears also fell. Do you have to do this? You have ruined our past with your own hands, now. Even the last good impression is going to be ruined. Since the incident, she has never cried in front of him. But now, she really can't help it anymore. Lu Qi looked at her tearful expression and was taken aback for a moment. He suddenly regained consciousness and his voice was filled with guilt. Anna, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I'm sorry, I just was too impulsive. I apologize to you. I'm just afraid. I'm afraid I might really lose you. He reached out to hug her, but she retreated back and forth, grabbing her shirt collar with her fingers and saying, Don't come over. Lu Qi looked at her guarded expression and couldn't bear to hurt her, so he took 2 steps back. You go. Xi'an looked at him with hatred. Lu Qi looked at her crying eyes and compromised, You rest well, I won't disturb you these 2 days. In the early morning, the entire city was shrouded in a thin mist. Xi'an parked the car, opened his phone, and saw the news that Qingyu had been released. The media claimed that the previous news was just a misunderstanding. After Lu Qi left that day, he sent her a message, but she never replied to him. Unexpectedly, he has released Qingyu now. However, even if he let Qingyu go now, the way he lost control that day has always been remembered by her. With this in mind, she took a deep breath, got off the car, and walked into the nearby breakfast shop. At around 8 o'clock in the morning, there were many people at the breakfast shop, but she still saw the man sitting alone in the corner at a glance. He was only wearing a simple blue shirt. Unlike every time Lu Qi appeared, it was all luxury brands and high-end customization. However, this man is very good looking. She had thought about it, and most of the friends around her, Lu Qi, knew each other. Their business was either closely related to the Lu family, or their own jobs were tightly controlled, just like Qingyu. So by gently moving his fingers, he can make the other person hurt their muscles and bones. Like Qingyu, she can't bear to see the other person being implicated by herself. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Renting a man online. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 4. Renting a man online. As for the others, more importantly, they are afraid of Lu Qi's influence and dare not come into contact with her. But if she doesn't make a decision, Lu Qi will still come to find her. What happened that day will happen again. In order to avoid such incidents from happening again, she asked an agent to help her introduce a marriage partner. He's getting married now, why should she behave obediently like a jade and be that mistress? She also wants to get married, and she also needs to obtain a certificate. She just wants to see if Lu Qi can still say things like love her when the time comes. He doesn't let himself mind his marriage with Yan Qingqing, she just wants to see if he mind continuing to be with a married woman. Yan Xi'an walked up to the man and sat down. Although he was dressed normally, he was very handsome. When she asked the agent to find someone yesterday, she emphasized that she must be handsome. She is Yan Kong, and Lu Qi knows about it. If he finds someone ugly, he will definitely not believe it. Just is this guy too handsome? She used to think that renting him for 500,000 would be too expensive, but now it seems like she realized. Well, she actually thinks it's a bit cheaper. The man sat at the table, adding aged vinegar to the face that the boss had just served him. When he saw someone sitting down in front of him, he looked up at Yan Xi'an, a pair of deep and refined eyes, a bit too handsome. Yan Xi'an looked away and became nervous for the first time. She pinched herself, it was really useless. Every day when she looked at Lu Qi's face, she was still amazed by other men. She took out her bank card as she had anticipated and placed it in front of him, pretending to be aloof, saying, "Here is 500,000 yuan, and the password is the last 6 digits of the card number. Please check it, and if there are no issues, we can go and collect the certificate as soon as you finish your meal." After all, she is the boss and doesn't want the other party to see her so unproductive appearance. It's 8:40 now. From here to the Civil Affairs Bureau, it should be around 9 o'clock, and the staff should also be back to work. The time is just right. The man's eyes were filled with doubts. 500000. Obtaining a certificate. Seeing him hesitating, Yan Xi'an said somewhat guarded, "I agreed on WeChat before that it would be 500,000 yuan. Why, aren't you thinking of a temporary price increase now? I heard from the agent that he used to move bricks on the construction site, and his sister was sick, so he had to come out to do such a thing. And 500000, which happens to be the cost of his sister's medical treatment." Xie Jingnan had a hint of surprise on his face. He had just finished filming in the countryside and rushed back overnight. He had been driving all night and was a bit hungry. He found a place to eat bowl of noodles on the roadside and met a woman who ran up to him, gave him 500,000 yuan and said he wanted to obtain a certificate from him. Is getting a marriage certificate the meaning he had in mind? Yan Xi'an said, "What is it that you didn't get a marriage certificate? Did you fall asleep? Last night we all agreed on WeChat, is he pretending to be foolish here now?" Yan Xi'an saw him staring at him in a daze, looked at the time on his watch, and urged, "Hurry up, I'm in a hurry. This noon is the wedding of Lu Qi and Yan Qingqing. She doesn't want to go, but her mother urged her a few times and said, 'Your sister got married. If you don't come, what will your relatives think?'" She thought for a moment and realized that it wasn't her who did the wrong thing. Why did she hide and why couldn't she go? She not only wants to go, but also takes her husband to show Lu Qi that it's not just him who can get married, it's not just him who can do whatever he wants. Recently, there seem to be fewer and fewer readers on QQ, but I am still very happy to see many old faces when opening new books. I love you all. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. She received the certificate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. She received the certificate. Xie Jingnan lowered his head and ate his own noodles. Yan Xi'an looked at him and asked anxiously, "Have you brought your household registration book and ID card?" Xie Jingnan nodded and said, "Here we go." He often stays outside for several months, and naturally carries his household registration book and ID card with him. At this moment, when he heard her words, he looked up at her with some uncertainty and said, "Are you really going to give me 500,000 yuan and still need to obtain a certificate from me?" Yan Xi'an looked at the man as if in his eyes, he had spent 500,000 yuan to obtain evidence from him, as if he had been wronged. She said, "Yes. It's just for obtaining the certificate, don't think too much. I'm going to a wedding today, and after obtaining the certificate, you can accompany me in the name of my husband. It's not really about marrying him." I don't know why he was so surprised. Upon hearing her words, Xie Jingnan seemed to understand something. She seemed to be a little girl who, like herself, was being pressured by her family to get married and couldn't help it. He sighed and said, "Are parents pushing marriage too much now? You look very young, so you don't need to be in such a hurry to get married, do you? Spending 500,000 yuan and still being able to rent a marriage partner. How could he not have thought of such a good thing?" Upon hearing Xie Jingnan's words, Xi'an frowned and didn't want to explain the real reason why she was in a hurry to get married. She stood up and said, "Hurry up, I'll wait for you outside." She walked out of the restaurant and stood outside, feeling extremely agitated in her heart. She used to think about what to do when she got married to Lu Qi. But I didn't expect that when she actually got married, she would be with someone else. "I'm fine." Not long after, Xie Jingnan's voice came from behind. Xi'an withdrew his thoughts and realized that his fingertips had already poked into his palm. She turned around and saw the man who had just eaten noodles standing behind her. He had just sat there, and she hadn't noticed yet. At this moment, she realized that this man was really tall, one head taller than her. He looked at her and said, "Shall we leave now? Let's go." With a calm face, she led him forward and her car stopped there. She opened the car door and got in. Xie Jingnan stood on the side, watching this scene, and soon opened the car door to come up. This is not far from the Civil Affairs Bureau. When they arrived, the staff of the Civil Affairs Bureau had just started working. Entering the door, obtaining the certificate, everything went smoothly. Xi'an walked out with the just obtained certificate and said to Xie Jingnan, "We have obtained the certificate. As I mentioned before, you are not allowed to interfere in my life. When I didn't call you, you are not allowed to come to me. Don't forget." Xie Jingnan heard her words and raised the corner of his mouth meaningfully. "Oh. I was originally called back by my family to attend Lu Qi's wedding this time. Especially his mother likes to arrange blind dates for him on such occasions. It is estimated that this time when he is called back, the same arrangement will be made. But to my surprise, I even got a certificate by hand. That's good. It also saved him a lot of trouble." Returning to the car, Xi'an drove directly to the hotel where they held their wedding. The hotel parking lot was very large, and she searched for a parking spot for half a day before finally parking the car. When I turned around, I found that the man in the passenger seat was already asleep. Watching the man sleeping soundly by the car window, Xi'an was speechless. She gave him 500,000 yuan and invited him to do things. He slept so soundly. She was hesitating how to wake up the man when the car door had already been knocked. Xi'an looked up and saw Lu Qi standing in front of the car. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Gift She Gives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The gift she gives. He always does this no matter where she appears, he can always find her. No, as soon as she arrived at the parking lot, he appeared in a daze. Today, Lu Qi changed into the groom's outfit and looked very handsome in his suit. Xi'an opened the car door and got out of the car. Lu Qi looked at her with a caring expression and said, "I sent someone to pick you up at your house, and they said you weren't there. Where did you go early in the morning?" Xi'an has been ignoring him for the past 2 days, and it is evident that he really wants to reconcile with her. Xi'an said coldly, "Where have I gone? Do I need to report to you? My brother.in.law." The word brother.in.law made Lu Qi's face turn black. He looked at her and habitually placed his hand on her head, but was avoided by Xi'an. Watching her reaction, Lu Qi darkened his eyes, withdrew his hand, and didn't dare to touch her again. His voice was very spoiled. "You always have such a strong temper. Have breakfast. I asked Aunt Gu to make breakfast for you, and I'll take you there. She doesn't have the habit of eating breakfast, and he always stares at her when he has free time. He has always been good at treating her well, but that was before now the words, groom, pinned on his chest made her feel glaring. He got married today and didn't go to accompany his bride. Instead, he came here to accompany her. Isn't that ironic? She said, I woke up early and went to prepare a wedding gift for you. What gift? Lu Qi's eyes were filled with anticipation, somewhat like a child about to receive candy. Xi'an looked at him with the hopeful eyes, and didn't know if he would still be so happy when he saw his marriage certificate. Xi'an took his bag off the car, opened it, and took out the marriage certificate that he had just received from the Civil Affairs Bureau. Still warm. She looked at Lu Qi and said, I'm married. Lu Qi hesitated for a moment, looked at the red notebook in her hand, and immediately felt that she was just joking. He joked, you probably just went to get this thing in the morning, right? Who did you get a fake certificate from? It looks quite similar. It's not a fake certificate, I really got married. Xi'an said solemnly, Lu Qi, you already have a wife, so naturally I also want to find a husband, right? You shouldn't mind loving me so much, do you? She saw Lu Qi's forehead clearly and jumped twice. He was very angry. Does he also know how to be angry? Has he ever thought about how she felt when she watched Qingqing get pregnant and marry her? She doesn't want to pursue these things anymore, just wants to stay away from him, out of sight and out of mind. But what about him? Just then, Lu Qi's phone rang and he answered the phone, Mom. I got it, I'll be right over. He hung up the phone and looked at Xi'an, who had regained his composure. I know that the matter between me and Qingqing has made you unhappy. It's okay, I will explain it to you slowly later. I have something else to do at the moment, so I'll ask Wu Yong to take you to rest and come back to find you later. He finished speaking and turned around with a dark face, leaving only Secretary Wu who had been following him all along. Xi'an looked at his back and clenched her fist forcefully. Before coming, she had anticipated how Lu Qi would get angry, and even wondered if he would chop her and that man, but... That's it. Secretary Wu stood on the side waiting for Xi'an, Miss Yan, let's go rest. Xi'an looked at Lu Qi's dog leg and said coldly, your master has already left, are you still not leaving? However, no matter what she said, Secretary Wu just stood on the side and was not in a hurry. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. He also knows Lu Qi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. He also knows Lu Qi. At this moment, the car door opened and Xie Jingnan got out of the car. Xi'an almost forgot about having a man like him present. She looked at the man and said, are you awake? Why didn't Lu Qi come down just now when he was here? Xie Jingnan yawned and looked in the direction of Lu Qi's departure, saying, isn't that Lu Qi? Upon hearing him call out Lu Qi's name, Xi'an was taken aback and said, why, do you know him? She originally thought that the man who specifically went to rent should not have any intersection with Lu Qi's circle, right? After all, people who can deal with Lu Qi usually have status and status. Who knew? Lu Qi is so well known, so anyone knows him. Does anyone in this city not know him? Xie Jingnan smiled. Who doesn't know the little tyrant of the Lu family? He came over today to attend Lu Qi's wedding. Just didn't expect that the little girl in front of me knew Lu Qi. Upon hearing that he truly knew Lu Qi, Xi'an darkened her eyes and asked with some concern, are you afraid of him? After asking this question, Xi'an felt a bit foolish. Who is not afraid of Lu Qi? Since the incident with Qingyu, the friends who have been close to her recently didn't even answer her phone yesterday, and some even deleted her WeChat directly. I'm afraid that if I offend Lu Qi, bad luck will happen to me. She had no choice but to rent a man online. But, does the man in front of him also know Lu Qi? Before Xie Jingnan could speak, Xi'an said, Lu Qi has a bad temper. Maybe he will do some outrageous things to you. If you're afraid, you can leave. She only hates now, how did she provoke such a man back then? He is the little tyrant of the Lu family, and everyone is afraid of him. Breaking up with him now has become such a difficult thing. Xie Jingnan heard her words and smiled. What am I afraid of him doing? He knows that stinky kid is very arrogant outside, but here, he only has the chance to teach him a lesson. Xi'an was surprised to see that he was not afraid of Lu Qi. Although this man has nothing and even wants to earn her money here, he is not afraid of Lu Qi. His confident expression gave her some peace of mind. Then let's go. Perhaps not everyone in this world is afraid of Lu Qi. Secretary Wu stood aside and saw the man following behind Xi'an. His eyes finally became more concerned. Miss Yan, this man is. Xi'an knew that he was Lu Qi's eyeliner and would report everything to Lu Qi. He deliberately introduced him. This is my husband. After listening, Secretary Wu's face immediately turned black. He coughed and kindly reminded, Miss Yan, I know you're angry with the young master, but that's about it. You don't want Qingyu's situation to happen again, do you? Upon hearing the words Qingyu, Xie Jingnan looked at Xi'an. He has been in the mountains for the past 2 days, and yesterday he heard his assistant talk to him about Qingyu's drug use. Do you dare to be related to this little girl and Lu Qi? Xi'an felt disgust upon hearing Secretary Wu's words. She was already angry with Lu Qi now, and Secretary Wu's words were simply adding fuel to the fire. She snorted, your young master is going to marry someone else now. Why, I can't be with other men yet. If you have the ability, go tell him. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. She married a very poor man. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. She married a very poor man. She couldn't help but hope that Secretary Wu would go and make a small report. After she finished speaking, she looked at Xie Jingnan walking slowly behind her as if feeling uneasy. Can you move faster? A big man, walking even slower than me. After she finished speaking, she deliberately reached out in front of Secretary Wu and pulled him over. This is the first time she has taken the initiative to lead a man like this, and she is also a stranger. Xie Jingnan was grabbed by her hand, stunned for a moment, and looked at this little girl. I didn't expect her to stick up like this. He almost instinctively wanted to push her away, but as soon as he thought about his current identity, which was rented by her for money, he controlled himself and immediately smiled. He has always disliked women, let alone those in the entertainment industry who are devoted to him. But the feeling of being held by her hand and seeking shelter like this is not that bad either. Xi'an pulled Xie Jingnan into the hotel and saw her mother Wang Mei from a distance. Wang Meidao said, Xi'an. Accompanied by a few relatives who came to attend the banquet. When she saw Xi'an, she walked over directly. When she saw the man next to Xi'an, her face collapsed and she said, who is this? Xi'an was willing to attend the wedding, and Wang Mei was very happy. She had been afraid that Xi'an would lose his temper and her relatives would laugh at her. But now Xi'an is here, but he has brought a man. The key is that this man not a familiar face. It looks very ordinary to wear, and the coat on my body is washed white and has a hole. As soon as she saw the two people holding hands, she quickly walked over and pulled Xi'an away from Xie Jingnan. Why did you argue with a man you don't know? Who is this man? She said, he. My husband. Xi'an glanced at Xie Jingnan. She knew that her mother wanted her to find an excellent man the most. A few days ago, when she begged herself not to argue with Qingqing, she said, Anan, you have good conditions, it's easy to find a good man. Unlike Qingqing. You can give her Lu Qi. After all, she is also your sister, there's no need to turn a blind eye to a man. My mother's greatest hope is that both of her daughters will marry well. In her opinion, even if Xi'an didn't marry Lu Qi, she wouldn't find someone with too poor conditions. But unlike now, getting so close to a stranger. Sure enough, as soon as she heard the words, husband, Wang Mei's face turned black and she said, you little girl, do you still want face? Can you just call me husband? Xi'an said, we have already obtained the certificate. This is the marriage certificate. She didn't hesitate to take out her marriage certificate and showed it to Wang Mei. Wang Mei's anger and blood surged as she watched. You're really crazy. She raised her hand in anger and was about to slap Xi'an. But looking at Xi'an, I dare not take action over the years. Our family has been supported by Xi'an, and today is Qingqing's wedding day. With so many relatives watching, how can she take action against her daughter? She put away her temper and said to Xi'an, forget it, go and see Qingqing. She didn't force herself against Xi'an either, knowing that reasoning with her was impossible, so she could only turn her gaze to Xie Jingnan on the side. Wang Mei said, you, come with me. Xie Jingnan just stood aside and witnessed everything. Although Wang Mei's voice was very low, he still heard it. It seemed that his mother-in-law was not satisfied with him. After listening to Wang Mei's words, Xie Jingnan still walked towards her. Xi'an knew his mother was going to cause trouble and was afraid that Xie Jingnan would be scared away. He reached out to stop him and said, you don't have to go. She doesn't want her mother to get involved in this matter. What if Lu Qi was driven away by his mother before he could see him? Xie Jingnan saw the concern in her eyes and smiled effortlessly, patting her hand and saying, wait for me. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Fraudulent Marriage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Fraudulent Marriage. His words sound very gentle, but they seem to have something to do with her. The key is, when he smiles, he looks really good. Xi'an was taken aback for a moment. She really thought it was strange. This man seemed to be really not afraid of anything. When she realized it, Wang Mei had already led Xie Jingnan away. Outside, Wang Mei looked at Xie Jingnan. She had already lost the restraint she had just shown in front of Xi'an. She said unfriendly, Sir, I don't know where you met my daughter, but please be sensible and leave her. Your mother-in-law, Xie Jingnan said politely. When Wang Mei heard him call her mother-in-law, she felt her blood pressure was high. Who is your mother-in-law? Our family's Xi'an is not someone you can imagine. Even if you really deceive her and get her certificate, it's still a scam. We haven't agreed yet. Speaking of which, she glanced at Xie Jingnan's clothes. He was wearing a black coat with a torn sleeve, which was torn while filming in the mountains. In Wang Mei's eyes, she was truly full of doubt about his identity. Which one is not glamorous when it appears in such a place? This man actually came wearing a tattered piece of clothing. Which of the boys around Xi'an is better off than him in terms of conditions? I don't know what kind of confusion Xi'an made when dealing with such people. What if he gets entangled? Fraudulent marriage. Xie Jingnan said proudly, we voluntarily got married and just received the certificate. I'm too lazy to tell you. Wang Mei knew it was all Xi'an's foolish behavior. You're not welcome here, you leave here. If I see you by her side again, don't blame me for being impolite to you. This man is really shameless. He has already started to cling to Xi'an. Is that okay? Xie Jingnan said, then I can't do it. Remembering the little girl's fear of him leaving, he raised the corner of his mouth. He is a person who keeps his promise. He promised her something, but he can't just forget it. Really? Wang Mei said, do you know who I am, Xi'an? She's Lu Qi's girlfriend. Lu Qi, do you know that the little tyrant of the Lu family is not someone you can afford to provoke? Xie Jingnan heard Wang Mei say that Xi'an was Lu Qi's girlfriend and said, but how did I hear that Lu Qi's wedding partner today is not him? The woman that Lu Qi wants to marry is called Qingqing. The family conditions are not very good. But because of Lu Qi's child, his grandfather had just been diagnosed with liver cancer in the first half of the year, and his family was afraid that he wouldn't live long. They were eager to let him see their grandson, so they decided to let that woman enter. Upon hearing Xie Jingnan's words, Wang Mei felt a bit annoyed and said, "I'm too lazy to explain to you, security guard, please ask this person out." Upon hearing Wang Mei's words, the security guard glanced at Xie Jingnan, who was dressed in plain clothes, and nodded, "Okay, madam. Wang Mei will soon be Lu Qi's mother. Law. What is the status of the Lu family here?" Now that the security guards see her, they naturally listen to her very much. After Wang Meifan instructed, he ignored Xie Jingnan and went straight back to the hotel. The security guard walked over and looked at Xie Jingnan, saying, "Sir, please go out." Xie Jingnan looked at the security guard in front of him and tugged at the corner of his lips. He didn't say anything, only found it interesting. He took out a cigarette from his pocket, held it in his mouth, and was about to light it for himself. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Yan Qingqing comes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors.